Hey Bowtie Nation, Joseph Hogue here with the Let's Talk Money channel and a special video for you today. Something we've never covered here on the channel before, investing in art and how to value these artworks as an investor. Now, I love the idea here because not only can it be a solid investment return that also helps you diversify your portfolio from the stock market ups and downs, but it's a really unique investment. It's a fun subject and can be a great gift idea around this time of year as well. Now, my own experience investing in collectibles is not ideal. I started collecting comic books when I was 12 along with my dad. That was around 1988, and if you know anything about the comics business, the 90s just saw massive printing of these things and just a wave of popularity from collectors and fans. Now, even after I stopped collecting, around the time I enlisted in the Marine Corps, my dad still collected for a couple years after that. So by the time he passed in 2001, we had around 24 boxes of comic books. That's nearly 5,000 comics. And what I found trying to sell these was those huge printing runs, really just pumping out millions of each issue in the 90s there, that most of the comics were barely worth the original cover price, if even that. There were a few good ones in there, like the Infinity Gauntlet series that we had and the first issue of Deadpool from 1997, but most of them, not so much. Of course, it was all worth it for the time I was able to spend with my dad, but if you're investing in art or any kind of collectibles, you need to know what you're buying and how to invest. So I wanted to get the inside scoop here from the CEO of Masterworks.io, Scott Lynn. Masterworks is the first platform to allow Main Street investors to buy shares of investment in fine arts, some of the best known artists like Warhol, Monet, and Picasso. Now, Scott founded Masterworks.io in 2017 after several internet startups, including Payability and V2 Ventures. The company has a research team to find and value these works of art on an investment basis, then acquires them, stores the pieces securely, and then creates an LLC on each of these to sell shares to investors. The average holding period is expected to be between 3 to 10 years, after which the art is sold at an auction and investors are paid out from that. And one example here, the company just recently sold its Banksy's Mona Lisa last year for $1.5 billion for an annualized return of 32% to investors. Now, full disclosure here, this video is being sponsored by Masterworks.io, and we'll give Scott a chance to talk about the company. But more than that, though, I just wanted to help everyone out there understand the fundamentals behind investing in art, how to get started, and how it fits with your overall portfolio. So Scott, thank you for joining us and offering your insight into investing in art.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to do this.
Yeah, really excited to jump in here because I think it's something that a lot of investors really haven't discovered or don't have exposure to. So, why would someone consider investing in art, and what have the returns been kind of historically?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the characteristics of the asset class, very high level, since 1995, contemporary art, and contemporary art is sort of defined as art created after World War II, has appreciated at 13.6% per year. Over the same time period, the S&P has appreciated at 8.9% per year. So, it's clearly an outperforming asset class. We've done a lot of research on loss rates in the asset class compared to other asset classes. It's very rare that someone buys a $10 million Monet, for example, and sells it for less than what they paid for it. And we can talk about the data around those loss rates and how our research team measures that. But we believe that it fundamentally has a role in any portfolio. The problem is that historically, there hasn't been a good way for investors to allocate to it unless they have millions of dollars to buy a painting. So it really has been an asset class that's been collected by the ultra wealthy for hundreds of years. And, I always use this phrase, hundreds of years, like people don't exactly realize that Sotheby's, which is one of the top 2 auction houses that just recently went private from the New York Stock Exchange, is 275 years old. Christie's is 250 years old. So the world that I come from, which is tech, we're used to 10 years being a long time frame for a business, but a lot of these companies have been around for generations.
Interesting. And so you talk about that long-term returns, but are there cycles in art investing and art values, just like there are in stocks? Is there, and beyond that, is there a correlation between maybe those two cycles? How is art correlated with stocks?
Yeah, so correlation, very broadly, when we talk about correlation, we talk about does the asset class move in the same direction as other asset classes? And what people care about mostly are public equities or the S&P 500. So we've looked at how does art increase or decrease in price when the S&P 500 increases or decreases in price. And what we found, we published our first report on this in 2018 with Citigroup. What we found is that it's essentially an uncorrelated asset class. So I think the highest correlation that we found between art and other asset classes was real estate. That correlation was 0.3, meaning that you could explain 30% of the movement between art and real estate, between the two asset classes, but 70% of the time they really moved in different directions. So it's a great diversifier to a portfolio, independent of the returns.
Interesting. And do you need to be, obviously, I think the biggest question on everyone's mind here is, do you need to be some kind of an art aficionado? How
Yeah.
does someone know if a specific piece is a good investment? Or, for example, I bought a piece, just before I got in the Marine Corps in 1999. And, it did okay when I sold it, but it basically just sold it on eBay, and
Right.
I knew nothing about it. Are there ways to value art that even a layperson can use?
Yeah, so I tell people to think about art very similar to how you think about real estate. So when we present offerings to our investors, we show similar paintings that have sold historically, how much they sold for, and then we calculate the historical appreciation rate between those different paintings to give an investor an idea for how much that painting is appreciating. So a lot of these artists we track, like Basquiat, for example, has historical appreciation rates between 17 and 20% a year for the past 20 plus years. Monet, who's a much older artist, obviously selling art for hundreds of years, has appreciation between 8 and 9%. Some of our mid-career, late-career artists have appreciation rates above 25%, but they're obviously for much more recent periods and more volatile. So, just like any other asset class, you see different segments of the art market perform differently.
Interesting. So, and so is this something that the lay investor, just the Main Street investor here, can go out and learn a little bit about and do a little bit better than maybe somebody with no knowledge? Do they are generally dead artists better than live artists, or how to what are some tips, I guess, that you could offer?
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of the work for investors, right? So we have the leading research team in the art market that analyzes returns. So we understand returns, and I can say that confidently today. We understand returns better than anyone else in the art market. We have an acquisitions team of 3 people that really focus on sourcing paintings by the artists that we think have the most momentum or that are most interesting for various reasons. And we're presenting about 1 to 2% of what we see to investors, or we're buying 1 to 2% of what we see and presenting it in offerings. So by the time someone winds up at Masterworks, they're really seeing the top, the very top end of the market, what we think are the best investments.
Interesting. And where would somebody start looking for art to invest in art? Obviously, Masterworks gives investors an easy platform approach, but if someone wanted to, start their own private collection, where might they look? Would they go to the auction houses or the local flea market, or how would they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I always encourage people to first start at auction. I think the art world is a very difficult industry to navigate. Working through private dealers, you never exactly know what the fair value of something is. There's obviously a lot of selling involved. It's kind of an intimidating process for a lot of people. So I think auction houses are the best place to start. I've been collecting personally for 20 years now. It's definitely a learning process. I mean, there's lots of, it's a hard industry to get involved with. There's lots of things you learn along the way, lots of mistakes you make.
Excellent. And so how long should investors expect to hold their art? And not only, I guess you could talk to on the platform, how long do you expect to hold it, as well as maybe a private collector, how long do they usually hold their artwork?
Yeah, I mean, private collectors tend to hold their art very, very long, right? So in the art world, we talk about the 3 Ds that lead to people selling, which is death, divorce, and debt. And those aren't necessarily 3 great things to talk about, but that's usually what triggers sales with private collectors. And again, most of the people that are buying these $1 million plus paintings, they're kind of the top 100th of 1%. So how they think about holding art is probably different than our investors. So when we buy painting, we tell investors to think of a 3 to 7 year hold. But we now have launched trading markets in these securities where investors are trading shares in different paintings. So if people want to exit their position before a painting sells, they can do that within the trading platform.
Okay. Okay. And so how are profits taxed when someone goes to sell a piece of art? So on the platform, as well as private collectors.
Yep. So when you sell your shares in the trading market, obviously for U.S. investors, that would be cap gain. We do have a Cayman vehicle built into this structure, which allows profits to be entirely passed through to international investors. So they're just taxed in their local jurisdiction.
Okay, interesting. And so I noticed you talked about having a secondary market on the platform as well. What should investors know when they're trying to sell in that, or even if they're going in there to buy from other investors? Are there fees, discounts to fair value? Maybe because I know just talking to somebody last week about the P2P lending space, and a lot of the secondary markets on that, people just rushed in. They were selling their loans out and had to take huge discounts to fair value. Is that something that happens in that secondary market? Do you expect to take kind of a discount to what your art is actually worth?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think that's true that most alternative assets do trade at a discount to fair value usually. We've quite frankly seen the opposite. I mean, I think 99% of the trades that we've seen on the trading platform are above the $20 IPO price for all of our offerings. You asked about transaction fees. We're not actually, under the regulatory framework that we use to operate our trading platform, we're not allowed to take trading fees. So we do it strictly as a benefit to investors. The one thing that I do tell investors with our trading, which is very different than trading an exchange listed security like Tesla or Google, is that there's more limited liquidity, right? So if you're selling a share in Tesla or Google, you can more or less exit that position right away. And although we do have good liquidity in the trading platform, and it's getting better and better every day, this is something that investors should think of taking days or maybe a couple of weeks to sell their shares rather than seconds like you would see on a regular exchange.
Excellent, interesting. And what's been your favorite piece on the platform that the platform has owned?
Well, we bought, I think it was our second painting. We bought this Banksy Mona Lisa painting, which we just sold 3 or 4 weeks ago for a 32% annualized net return to investors. So that was obviously a great offering in the very, very beginning. Now we're doing one offering every 7 to 10 days, and I feel like I have dinner conversations with people all the time about what those are, and I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of forgetting because there's so many offerings happening. But yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of great artists like George Condo, Basquiat, Andy Warhol, even more recent artists like Cecily Brown. We've done a bunch of Günter Forg. I mentioned Monet earlier. So we're focused on 40 to 45 different artists now. And we're launching one offering every 7 to 10 days.
Some great points there. I want to thank our guest today, Scott Lynn, CEO of Masterworks.io, on how to invest in art, what to look for, and what you can expect. I think art can be a great investment that everyone should be looking at, and not just for those returns, which can be solid in themselves, but in some of these other benefits. We saw how extremely low correlation of returns between art and stocks, basically zero, which means even when stocks crash, your investments in art can help smooth out that overall portfolio return so you don't freak out. Beyond that, though, art can just be a really fun investment. It's a world most investors don't really see a lot, so learning about it is going to open up a totally new experience for you. It's a great conversation starter, and with Masterworks.io, anyone can own $1 million Monet for as little as $20. Check out the link to Masterworks.io in the video description below for how to get started investing in art. Don't forget to join the Let's Talk Money community by tapping that subscribe button and clicking the bell notification.